minutes, I'm going to give a presentation about our experiences using the network approach. You may have heard a couple of presentations throughout this meeting that this concept of networking for capacity building has become very important. So I'd just like to give sort of the rosy part and the thorny part of the road that we've walked using this network approach. Thank you. Firstly, CapNet, where I work, this is what we're about. I generated these words from something called a keyword cloud generator. So you can put this thing on your website and it tells you what are the things that you make noise about. And so this will generally be it. Some are core and won't change, such as water resources management. Some will change with time, depending on the themes that are in fashion then. I thought that could be an interesting tool as well to analyze your relationship perhaps with your partner over time and see what are the keywords that you're using in your home. Our strategy at CapNet basically is that in order for us to reach the goal of capacity of organizations to manage water and to sustain services, we need to have in place locally people who are able to train and the human resources that can sustain training. And because of that, that is why we use this network approach to capacity development, so as to embed knowledge in local institutions. So this is kind of a theory, if you like, that we work with, that investing in networks of local knowledge and capacity builders will eventually sustain any activities that you try to do in capacity development. So working through these networks, we have found that for sure working through networks is effective, especially if you are talking about integrated water resources management, a concept that has just evolved lately. And if you have a new idea, there are a quick way to get word out there and to get institutions to embed this knowledge in their curriculum and in their training program. So I use here an example of some of our outputs for 5 years in the second phase of our project. And basically what you see here is that in a period of 5 years, these networks that we work with across the world are able to generate to reach out to about 8,000 participants in training and education programs. And that's just trying to illustrate that it's possible to have this rapid movement of knowledge across the world using the power of networks. But then later I will talk about whether or not those numbers are meaningful in any way in terms of how water is actually being managed on the ground. So, the networks are diverse across the world, and here in Africa we have those listed networks: the Nile Basin, WANET in West Africa, WaterNet, which is in Southern Africa, Nile IWRnet, also in the Nile Basin, WaterCap in Kenya, and AGWNet. And the challenge that we find working with networks is, what kind of a model can you say is the ideal networking model? Perhaps there is none. And if we use the networks that we work with to analyze how they are organized, you see that they take many different shapes and forms. So for example, in Southern Africa, the network that we work with, called WaterNet, they are attached to a regional economic grouping, the Southern Africa Development Community. And that community provides them with the political support, it provides them with policy direction in terms of the needs of the region. But should we recommend that in other regions? That's difficult because, for example, all these multiple regional economic groups that exist in Africa, it would be difficult for us to have a network for each of them, especially considering how they overlap. So if we can't have networks organized around regional economic groupings, perhaps we could have them around river basins, because we already have two that are based on the Nile River Basin. And then if you look also at the multiplicity of the river basins, that makes it very difficult. So at the same time, I should say that the countries that speak Portuguese, Cape Verde, Mozambique, Angola, they're also establishing something called a Lusophone network based on language. We also have up here in North Africa, Arabic countries. We also have in West Africa, French West Africa, as well as English West Africa. And in actual fact, what we call the WANET, which is based in West Africa, at some point broke up into two different networks. So these are some of the challenges that you face trying to prescribe what is an ideal network, and it really makes it so difficult. As you saw, in Africa we have also something called the African Groundwater Network. So should we recommend that networks be based on themes such as climate change, economics and finance, WASH, and so on. The point I'm trying to bring about is that it's all based on the local situation, the opportunities that exist in a place that define how networks either grow organically or otherwise. It's really difficult for us to say that there is a model that works and that we could recommend. So, beyond these sort of numbers that I talked about that illustrate that networks are a powerful tool for rapid movement of knowledge, it's also possible to achieve some outcomes. What we've been trying to do is to monitor the outcomes that participants achieve, the change that they achieve within their organizations between 8 to 14 months after they attend our training programs. And as you can see, it is possible to actually have some real change that indicates that water management on the ground is changing. Question is, what determines the participant that can actually go and do something after they attend a training program and the one that doesn't do something? And those are really questions that we try to address in monitoring, which is proving to be difficult because what often happens is partnerships work in visioning, they also work in strategizing and delivering a program. After delivery, you monitor outputs together. But what we don't often see happening is learning from outcomes and then redesigning programs so that they're learning programs. And that is, I see, the weakness of operating through a partnership approach. It works until a certain point, and then you take different directions the minute after you record your outputs. And that's kind of a challenge, I guess, in any kind of partnership. Then I'd just like to move on to, do I have a lot of time? I think I had 6 minutes, 3 minutes. Thank you. I'd just like to move on to a different topic, something to do with why we are here, why we're trying to use a networking approach, and I'm trying to make a case here also for knowledge management through a network approach. I borrowed some data from a presentation from a publication by these authors here, and basically they try to look at the knowledge that is generated, for example, on water and sanitation, on drinking water, on water and sanitation, and water and sanitation together. And this is the kind of results that they get, that water and drinking without sanitation is by far and large the knowledge that is produced on these subjects in the world. And water and sanitation is much smaller, and yet one could argue that it should be the reverse if we were looking at the priorities that are coming out of policymakers and that are coming out of evidence from the ground. And then if you look at another set of data, for example, on rain-fed agriculture and irrigated agriculture, if you're talking about the developing world, or if you're talking about Africa where we are, probably the greatest opportunities that we have now, not in the future, for achieving food security with a growing population, is to focus on rain-fed agriculture, or at least equally in the same way that we focus on irrigated agriculture. But we see here a dominance of irrigated agriculture versus as opposed to rain-fed agriculture. I'm just trying to say who defines, the kind of knowledge that proliferates out there, as opposed to what is actually needed in specific areas. And then another set of data which is quite interesting, is so where is this knowledge produced? And if you look at the knowledge on scientific publications on climate change adaptation, developed countries develop the bulk of the knowledge, a little bit from countries in transition, and then biofuels, for example, it would be zero. And why do I mention biofuels? These are things that are topical, happening in Africa, land acquisitions because of biofuels that have an impact on water resources, that have an impact on water policy, and yet within the region, it doesn't seem to be any knowledge production on those things. So some bold statements emanate from these publications, and one of them is that urgent water challenges are not sufficiently researched, which means people are researching what they want, or I don't know what, or how it is defined, the priorities that people research, but also that developing countries with their enormous challenges that they have are not contributing to this knowledge that would actually direct the solutions that they should develop. So I then move on to what we are trying to do about these kind of problems. Not exactly this exact problem, but this problem of knowledge access. And what we do is we've been developing some training materials and these are developed in partnership between people from the South, different parts of the South and the North and so on. And I'll give you an example of how popular these training materials are. In 2011, these are the kind of downloads that you saw of the training material database that we have. And interesting to note is the contribution of non-English downloads to the total amount of downloads that happen out there. And the point I'm trying to make here is if you look at our groundwater manual, which is not translated into Spanish, French, or Portuguese, you know, it's really missing out on a big, here in Africa probably it would be French and Portuguese people that we're not reaching out to. But, you know, at this putting material, developing this kind of materials is proving to be a very useful strategy for us to at least try and bridge this gap between, you know, of accessibility to knowledge, basically.
Mr. Ni,
okay, I have to complete. Okay, that's fine, but at the same time, I have to say now, if you look at, so where are the people that are making those downloads, then the picture kind of changes. You know, this will be the top 10 countries. That was 2007, but now maybe things are starting to change with Kenya on the top, South Africa, and I think that's because there's an internet movement going on in Africa. So this is the problem of accessibility to knowledge. So I talked earlier about the production of the knowledge, and then the fact that people actually don't have the capacity to take advantage of these online platforms that we try to develop. But the good news is this picture of internet access in Africa is really fast changing, much faster than the rest of the world. So what are the kind of challenges that we see in this network approach? And I've just picked some favorite ones because I could go on and on. And one of them is addressing interaction. For example, we have a bias towards water resources management. You know, it's not a designed bias, it's just how things have, the networks that we work with have a bias towards water resources management. But I think it is not very smart to think of water resources management very separately from water services. One impacts on the other. So how do we develop knowledge products that actually address this interaction while still having some depth in themselves in how they deal with problems? The second problem that we find is the water sector sees itself as the integrator of stakeholders. You know, it's like there was this default function made by God that if you're in the water sector, then you have the integration mandate. The truth of the matter is people in agriculture, energy are also talking about integration, integrated energy management, integrated soil fertility management. They are also saying, hey, water sector, why don't you come and join us? And water sector is thinking that they are the default integrated of people integrated water resources management. There are many competing concepts, and thus you find it is difficult to have you know, fair debate with other sectors and fairly include them to influence. I will leave it at that and leave you with some key messages.
So Nick, can you go to the last slide now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I will leave you with that, and as I walk down, you can pick any of those to be one of the key messages from this presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for raising this key challenge for the capacity development, and you can see how multiple they are. And I actually would like to hear from Mr. Bernard to see